I'm going to talk to you about driving test nerves. So, why do we get nervous for a driving test? Well, the truth is that being nervous for a driving test or any kind of test, we've got a perceived feeling of scrutiny, is actually very, very normal. I've got to admit that when I took my own driving test and when I was being tested to become a driving instructor, and when I have to take a test to actually keep my badge, I get nervous as well. It's very, very normal, because it's adrenaline, it's fight or flight. You feel that the examiner is judging you, and you're frightened of failing. That is all very, very normal. But everybody gets nervous, like I said. But nerves, although you can't make nerves go away, you can control how they affect you. And a lot of that comes from in your mind. And that's why nerves affect people in different ways. Some people see a driving test as a more negative thing than other people. Some people get more frightened of people than others. Some people are more anxious about being with strangers. Yeah, I understand that totally. But I can't just say don't be nervous, because that's not going to help anyone. But how you let the nerves affect you is a different matter, because your nerves cause you to produce adrenaline, which, as we know, is your fight or flight hormone. Now, when that hormone kicks in, the fight or flight, your heart starts to race. You might sweat. You might lose your speech. Again, very, very normal. But you can control it to a certain degree by how you think about the situation that you're in. So, for example, fight or flight comes from how you're thinking. So if you're thinking positively about the driving test and you're confident in your own ability about what you're doing, then the nerves can affect you in a good way, because if you're thinking that you're being asked, you're just going to do what you're being asked to do in the way that you've been taught, you'll do that and you'll do it well. And that should calm down after the first couple of minutes into your drive. Then the nerves will start to ease. They may come back again as your test starts to come to an end and you're on your way back to the test centre, you're about to pull up. But the bit in between can be controlled. What really does affect you negatively is if you're thinking negatively about your driving test. You're thinking about what the examiner is thinking about you. You're thinking about, have I done this wrong? Have I done that? You might make a slight mistake. You might do some awkward clutch releasing, or you might do some harsher braking, or you might make little mistakes that you see as being a mistake, but they might not be. They might just be, a little error that won't fail you. They might not even be an error at all. It could just be in your mind. So what you want to do when you go into a driving test is not be focused on the outcome. Just be focused on the drive that you're doing, and do what the examiner asks you to do in the way that you've been taught. I say this to every learner driver who's about to take a driving test, and some people are able to take it on board better than others, but I do try. If you're thinking negatively about what you're doing, an example of that is if you come to a roundabout that's busy and you start thinking, oh, I'm never going to get off of this, it's too busy, what am I going to do? Oh, I hate this roundabout. Or you have to do a manoeuvre that you think, oh, I hate doing this manoeuvre, why did I get that one? Then you're going to be thinking negatively, you're going to rush things, and you're going to make, somewhere along the line, an incorrect decision. And if you're thinking like that, if you don't make a serious fault, you're going to be a cat's whisker away from it all the way through your test. So thinking positively and thinking that you can do things will work out better for you. Now, if you do come to a situation that you think is going to be challenging, like the situations that I've just mentioned, instead of thinking, oh, I don't like this, I'm not very good at this, I don't think I can do it, just think of the skills involved and use the skills involved at your pace. And if you've been trained to test standard, then you should be able to do that, and you should be able to do it quite easily, as long as you're calm, and that is the main thing. I know a lot of people think, what's the examiner thinking? You'll see the examiner, he'll have his iPad, and you'll see him, touch his iPad with the stick that he uses to mark. Now, that does not necessarily mean that the examiner's marking a fault, because they have to mark what's been covered. There are certain legal requirements that have to be met for a driving test to be valid, and the examiner does have to record that those legal requirements have been met, which can have nothing to do with the outcome of your test. And also, you might go into it, you think, oh, if I'm nervous I don't drive very well. Okay, yeah, I can understand why somebody thinks that. But what the examiner's looking for, well, in fact, he's not really looking for anything. He's not there to judge whether you're a smooth driver, a nice driver, or anything, because they do understand that you're nervous. They understand that you might underperform in your driving when you're nervous. They also understand that your skills aren't as polished as an experienced driver's, so they're not looking for perfection. It's actually my job to scrutinise your driving. They're not scrutinising your techniques. Like I say, that's my job. So on the basis of that, I should be more scary than an examiner, or any instructor should be more scary than an examiner. All they're there to do is to test the safety. And if a safety fault arises, that's where it gets marked. You start off the test with a clean sheet, no faults. And if you drive in a decent way, then you should get no faults or very few. But if you let it affect you, you'll either get a lot of faults, and some of them may be serious or dangerous. So my advice is, whenever you have got a driving test coming up the day before, think positively on the run up. Make sure you get a good night's sleep. Have something to eat before you test, because if you try and perform on an empty stomach, you don't perform well, or certainly not as well as you would do if you'd eaten. Bananas are a good thing. I understand not everybody likes bananas, but if you at least have something before you test, it could be a slice of toast, it could be whatever. Don't have too much to a point where you feel stodged and tired, because that can have the opposite effect. But your brain does need fuel to perform. And turn up for your test. You'll be nervous in the waiting room. You'll do your drive, then just do your drive, come back and listen to what the examiner has to say, and it will all be constructive.